What's the creepiest thing you've ever experienced when you've been alone? Laying in bed. And you hear the dog door flap back and forth. Yet your dogs are on your bed. Truth story. Found out rats like to come in that way. Went and got to cats, don't hear that anymore. Once when I was home alone at night, I was just playing Mice Box when I noticed at the corner of my eye that my laptop on the other side of the room had turned the face recognition on. Even though I was nowhere near it and not in its camera view, and it had been in the same exact position for about an hour without doing anything. Doesn't sound as creepy writing it down now, but I nearly shouted at the time. When it was night, I always heard my mother coughing downstairs. One weekend my parents and my brother went on a trip together and I was home alone. And I heard the coughing. So it was not my mom. I was walking home from a bar one night when I was at uni. And heard what sounded like a blood-curdling female scream. I was absolutely petrified, made a cursory glance to see if I could easily see what was going on, but when I couldn't see anyone I sprinted home. It was only months later that I saw a video online and realized what it was. It was a freaking fox. Their screams are horrifying. Once my grandma was out of town to visit my uncle who lives in another state. I was watering her plants, feeding her dog, checking her mail, all that stuff. I went inside and her TV was turned on. Turned it off. Went into a different part of the house to water the plants she kept in a den-like area. Walked back through the living room and the TV was on again. This time the golf network. My pap loved napping to golf. Like every other 60-something on the planet. Turned it off and went about my business. Came back a few days later to repeat this routine and some of her figurines had been turned around. He'd sometimes do this because it annoyed my grandma. Probably not creepy. But it makes me chuckle. Me and my mom saw someone or something watching us sleep. I was about 5 or 6 years old and my mom was putting me to sleep. I fell asleep and when I woke up in the middle of the night I saw a dark figure like a man standing in front of the window. I woke my mom up almost about to cry and I was hoping it was just a tree or something because we were on the second floor of the house. But when she woke up she also saw what happened and told me to stay put and don't move. She quickly ran to the living room because we had guests over and everyone was still up drinking. She told everyone what happened and for 3 hours everyone went out and searched around the house. What I didn't tell her was that when she left the window started to rattle as if someone was trying to open it. I was scared and never slept on my own in that room until I was 8. It was my parents' basement when I was visiting home during uni. I thought it was haunted. Stuff would vanish or seem to move on its own. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps upstairs when no one was home and investigate, and indeed I was alone. Then I started literally missing time and finding myself in different places down in the basement. There were other things. Turned out carbon monoxide leak and poisoning. I was lucky I wasn't there for extended periods and it was fall so windows were open. When I was a kid, I used to spend a lot of time alone in my basement. We had a TV down there. So I was down there pretty late most nights in the summer. One pretty late night, I swear I heard rustling from behind me. But when I turned around, there was nothing there. I felt a really sharp breath on the back of my neck, hard enough to blow my hair. Took off up the steps, leaving everything on downstairs. I grabbed my mom and we went back downstairs to check it out. Everything was turned off. I didn't hang out downstairs anymore. This happened a few years ago. It was about 9 PM and I was returning from practice. I would say I'm a pretty paranoid guy and usually overthink stuff. As I was walking down the road I had this terrible gut feeling. Like my heart dropped. I immediately felt like I should look behind me. I turned around and saw a man, pretty muscular, around his middle 30s, staring at me. I froze and suddenly the same gut feeling returned. I don't know why but I had that urge to scream. The guy actually took off running. Probably because he thought I was calling for help. When I got home I told my parents. I was 14 at the time, and we called the police. A few days later a police officer knocks on our door and starts asking me questions. He had a picture of the guy from that night. I could tell it was him due to him being bald. And from his muscular body. It turns out they had already caught the guy and just wanted to confirm if it was him. I later find out this guy has been guilty for murder, molestation, etc. He was also carrying a knife the night I saw him. Really messed up guy. Edit. I was a really smart boy at the age of 14. So of course I didn't go to my house immediately. In case he followed me again. I just kinda went as far from my house before returning. A friend of mine standing in my yard at 4 AM or so. Was up doing homework. The next day he confessed he had simply been riding through the neighborhood and saw me and tried to catch my attention to wave at me. Super nice guy. Hasn't happened since. Here's a funny one. I was home alone at watching TV in the family room. It's a dark and windy night. And I think I hear something thumping outside the patio doors. I figure it's something to do with the wind. So I ignore it. The thumping continues. And suddenly I realize that it sounds like somebody walking on the back patio. The curtains are closed across the patio door. So I get up, walk over, and throw the curtains open. There's a guy standing right on the other side of the glass. Looking in. I jump back. Terrified. My heart racing. The guy jumps back also. He was as scared as I was. Because he was my reflection. This was years ago. At my parents' house. They were out of town for the weekend. So being a coward, I had the doors locked early. Blinds shut. Lights on in several rooms. Had a banging on my front door. Then a minute or so later. Something knocking on my window. It was my ass friend trying to scare me while his wife waited in the car. Ghostly stagecoach. I was driving with my dad and we're in the middle of the country. We were approaching an intersection about a 1/4 mile up the road. It was approaching dusk, still plenty of light to see. And we saw a large greyish translucent cloud. If I had to compare it to a shape, my dad and I agreed that it looked most like a stagecoach. Random, I know. But still, appear out of thin air on the left side of the intersection and slowly cross the road in front of us and then disappear into thin air after crossing the road. It was so clear to us that my dad pretty much slammed on the brakes. We looked at each other and said, "Did you just see?" Dart. Yup. Not sure if it's spooky, but it's something I've never experienced before. And haven't since. I was watching a haunting in Connecticut home alone at around 3 AM when the TV turned on by itself in the basement. I did a full house sweep with a sword and a taser but found nothing. I got off the bus one night coming home from work. A guy also got off at my stop, but I didn't think much of it. And started walking the couple blocks I had to walk to get to my apartment. I heard footsteps behind me and realized that guy was still walking behind me. Okay. Maybe he walks the same route. Whatever. As I was getting closer to my building I felt like the steps sounded faster. Like half walk. Half running toward me. I started to panic because at this time I didn't have a cell phone or any way to call for help. I noticed another man walking on the opposite side of the street. And he started crossing towards me as well. At that moment I got to my yard and jogged up to the door and threw it open, and as I did I heard the one behind me say, "Hey, wait." As I slammed the door shut and locked it. There was a window in the door and we locked eyes. He was standing in the middle of the yard just staring at me. Way closer than I even thought he was. He turned and said something to the guy that had been on the other side of the road that I couldn't hear. And they walked off together. I was kind of stunned as to what just happened. I had a heavy, nauseous feeling in my stomach. Like I'd just barely escaped something horrible. After that I always had my boyfriend meet me at the bus stop and walk me home. Once I was up late on my phone in my bed watching YouTube until I accidentally dropped my phone down the side of my bed. When I went to pick it up, I heard a sort of distorted voice saying, "Get back into bed now." It was night and I had to take a crap. I ran to the bathroom, but I felt the whole room having a weird vibe and it was cold af being winter and the heater was on. So I went to the bathroom. I didn't close the door because I had to take this massive poop. 3 minutes in, I was on my phone minding my business until I get a vibe that someone was watching me. From my peripheral vision, I swear to God, I saw something run across the other room. I thought it was something else, but I looked to the door again and saw a shadow moving. I wiped, closed and locked the door and laid my ass to sleep in the tub with the lights on. I got more scared when I woke up from a loud banging noise, but it was my dad needing to pee. This is copy pasta of my response to another similar thread. I've told this story before, but it's been a while and may just get buried. But here goes. I was out in the country late at night taking some long exposure photographs of the Hale-Bopp comet as it approached the sun, which was marvelous by the way. I had driven out of town and just picked a dark, empty farmer's field to set up. Nice and dark. I'm out there for a couple hours when I get this massive feeling of I need to leave now. I pack up my camera, tripod and lawn chair, throw it all in my car, get in and start the car. When the lights of the car come on, I see the wolf that was sitting 20 feet from where I was positioned, just sitting there staring at me. I've never gotten bigger chills in my life. I do not have the photos of the comet. They turned out terrible. When I was around 10, I came back home after school and started doing my homework and the TV suddenly turned on. I went and turned it off. A few minutes later it opened again. I was starting to get freaked out, so I called my mom. She tells there's a ghost in the house. Leave. I'm 10. My heart stopped and I almost cried. Then she starts laughing and tells me not to worry and that my dad will check it out once he gets home. Turned out to be some sort of automatic thing that would turn on the TV. Edit. Bad translation. Wasn't entirely alone. Was watching TV with my sister. Parents were out when we heard what sounded like footsteps coming down the stairs. B-level house. Stairs located at the back of the sofa. We both turned around and saw a shadow figure, looked like a shadow man, walk down the stairs, out of front entrance and disappear. It was scary as frick, especially because we both saw it. Recently we were having dinner as a family and we got to talking about spirits, ghosts, and my dad jokingly asked if we'd ever encountered any. My sister and I confirmed yes, and in the house. My mom then asks, is it the shadow figure? I've seen it too. Seems pretty harmless. My mom is a good Catholic girl. It definitely spooked us because we had never told them, and my mom confirmed seeing it too but was oddly calm about it. My vision turning negative for a split second twice. This is the one experience I've ever had that truly made my skin crawl. Anyway. Long time ago during World of Warcraft original days. It was a weekend. I was pulling an all-nighter. I stepped out onto my balcony to have a smoke. The balcony was in a little alcove, so nobody could tell I was there. It was 4th floor. High enough that people on the ground didn't see. Anyway. It's like 3:30 AM. I'm sitting in my deck chair zoning out when I hear the faint tinkle of the ice cream man. WTF? As I watch the most rusted, beat up, jacked ice cream truck I have ever seen slowly cruises down the residential blocks. My balcony had a great view of the surrounding neighborhood and I watched for maybe 15 minutes as this guy methodically went up and down the streets, tootling his little melody in the humid stillness of the summer night. It was creepy as frick. At his closest point to me, I could see one huge, hairy Popeye style forearm sticking out the window. The guy had to be a huge monster. For sure he was looking for someone to kill. I stayed very still, and when he was out of lows of my balcony I quietly went inside and shut all the curtains and made sure the doors were locked. I was at the hospital visiting a friend for a few hours and then decided to go home. As I was walking to the train station I didn't seem to notice anyone. I was alone at night on an empty street with no one in sight. I came across a traffic light and decided to wait, although no one was even driving at the time. So I don't even know why I didn't just walk to the other side real quick. Anyways, I was too distracted by my phone when I suddenly got this gut feeling to look left. There was a man walking towards me, and naturally I didn't think anything of it. The man was now standing a few feet from me and I could visibly see him. He was wearing ripped dirty clothes and had greasy long hair. What creeped me the most was his smile. He was looking at me constantly with that creepy smile, and then he started talking to me in a different language. I didn't know what to do or say, so I just stood there. The man then got angry and started yelling. Now I was really creeped out and started walking to the train station. I looked behind me and the man was running at me with a piece of glass, and then I too started running. Luckily a train was stopping, so I quickly hooped in. The man was for some reason not trying to come in and stood in front of the doors and looked at me with the same creepy smile. I was relieved and petrified, and that was that. I appreciate everyone who read this.
Hi there. Look, if you enjoyed the video, well, why not go ahead and hit that like and subscribe to Reddit Stories. In fact, if you want to see even more responses to this thread, well then, take a look. There's the link in the description below. And remember, show some love to those authors while you're there. And I look forward to seeing you next time.